Into the wild I'll go, and into the wild I am. It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home. Into the wild I'll go, and into the wild I am. It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home.
Welcome to the Free Birth Society podcast. This is a radical space for women who are ready to celebrate their autonomous choices in birth, motherhood, and beyond. Together, we'll learn about wild birth through personal narrative, we'll explore the politics of birth, and we'll analyze everything that relates to our lives as women from a feminist perspective. Here's your host, Emily Saldea.
It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home.
Welcome to the show, my friends. This week we have a return guest, a fan favorite really, my sweet sister Sparrow from Los Angeles. She's back on the show to tell her redemption story. You may remember her from an earlier season when she told us about her first birth, when she transferred herself. She had felt confident in the transfer, thinking that she could just go to the hospital as a seasoned birth worker and get a catheter to empty her bladder. Instead, she was wrongfully diagnosed with HIV and forced into a C-section. It's a brutal story, and so I'm especially thrilled to have her back on today sharing a new story. Sparrow tells us about her new love, her beautiful family, her sovereign birth, and her much-deserved blissful postpartum. Before we get going, I want to announce that the very membership you're going to be hearing Sparrow reference in this episode where she found her RBK, yes, the Free Birth Society membership, is opening doors for new members for the last time this year. And we're doing it at 40% off the normal annual price. If you join now, you'll lock in this sale price for life. So here's what you need to know. This is the online gathering space for women that love this podcast, that are interested in sovereign birth, that are or want to be radical birth workers, and let's just say if you identify as a wild mother. If you are holistically minded, interested in untangling yourself and your family from the medical paradigm, and resonate with our work, you belong with us. We are the lighthouse and we are calling you home. Come find your place among our sisterhood, where through conscious community, we're healing the fractures of our sister wounds. We rally together as mothers and access the women's wisdom that belongs to us. But really what I'm saying is, if you're a mom or a mom-to-be and you're asking Google what contractions feel like or what to do with your feverish baby, you can just do so much better than that. Ask the mothers themselves. That's what this group is all about. We're here for you. We're here for the first time your baby falls off the bed, gets a fever or a rash. If you are a mother that wants to live a holistic lifestyle, then surround yourself with women who already do. Gates are open for a very short time, so jump on in at freebirthsociety.com/membership and get a locked-in annual price that is 40% off. All right, it's a big month at Free Birth Society. We have more coming your way, but for now, please enjoy this super sweet episode. All right, we have today a very special woman to me who has been on the podcast before. I don't remember which season, but we will put it in the show notes. So for Season 4. Mm-hmm. So, I have my friend from California, Sparrow, on. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
And she recently free birthed her second child. So obviously I had to have her on to tell that story, because those of you who will remember, and she'll give a quick overview here, she had a insane, go of it with her first. And like I said, I'll put the link in the show notes to listen, because there's a lot of wisdom in that episode. It's really worth going back and visiting after you've heard this one. But yeah, let's just pass it to you, Sparrow. Like, what do you want to say to help orient new listeners to your future story or your story that's coming up. And also, I just want to put my excitement into the episode because you and I Marco'd after your birth, and I got like a little bit of it, but this is actually my first time as your friend and someone who loves you so much, getting to actually hear the whole story, and also you leaving MRF last year and then just immediately you had just found this amazing man, and then you left MRF, and you are living proof that when you leave the festival in that high vibe, you're either going to get pregnant or you're going to start a business or some big shift will happen. So,
well, yes. And I met him right after I was floating off the high of finishing the blood mystery school. And that was also just such a high vibration. And then, matriarch was, yes. So, let me just get everybody oriented. And it is interesting. I feel like this, my most recent pregnancy, I really got to reflect so much more on my first go of it. And I'm just going to give everybody the Cliff Notes version of it, but it was so, just kind of tragic in so many ways. And it's not anymore, and that's why I'm so grateful to be here, to be able to tell a very different story. And, but I grieved a lot during my most recent pregnancy about my first pregnancy in layers that I couldn't even access because I was just so much in survival mode. And so the Cliff Notes version of my first story is that I had planned a free birth and could not release my bladder, which I did way after the fact, way after my birth, find a way to release your bladder at home, which I shared in my last interview. If anybody wants to go back and tuck that in your toolkit, I wish I had had that in my story, but I couldn't release my bladder. So yes, my baby couldn't get past that. And I thought being a birth worker and having all this knowledge and going in with, a good friend who was also knowledgeable of the system, that I could go into the hospital and get a very simple catheter and leave and go home. And I had been trying at home for about 2 days, and it was just really getting tiring, but I was not mentally or spiritually exhausted. I wasn't giving up in any way. I really went in thinking that I can get this little tiny bit of help, sign out against medical advice if I needed to, and just go home and finish my journey. But instead, I was thrown just this insane curveball that I could have never guessed. And both me and my baby were misdiagnosed as HIV positive. And I ended up with a completely unnecessary C-section after 3.5 days of labor. And when I was wheeled out of the operating room, I was met with 11 people just waiting for me, and like 3 social workers who harassed me for the following 2 days, would not allow me to breastfeed my brand new baby. And, just why did it take 2 days to get definitive test results? I don't know. It was a nightmare. It was so stressful. I was using every ounce of my energy to try and protect my, 2-hour-old baby that they wanted to inject with, really crazy, really crazy HIV medication without having definitive test results. And every time I brought that up, I was like, why would I was just, I was even trying to play ball with them a little bit as if I would ever consider doing that. But I was just like, how can I possibly make an informed decision when we don't have definitive test results? Where are my test results? It took 2 days. Everything came back negative. Me and my baby are completely healthy, and they walk in and they're like, so your test results came back. Everything's fine. You don't have HIV. And would you like to go home? And I'm like, I'm sure they wanted me to get the F out of there. And at that point, I just I burst into tears because I had been holding so much and having to defend so much. Anyways, went home and healed physically really well. Mentally, I had postpartum anxiety pretty bad for about 8 months. And And so that's the Cliff Notes version of my first go around. What I didn't share in the first story that I think needs to be told today is that the other layer of what was going on emotionally in my life was that I was abandoned by my ex-husband at 11 weeks pregnant. And even that abandonment wasn't even like completely solid. So I think for a lot of my pregnancy, I kept thinking that things would potentially work out. And he left the country for 2 weeks and then has never come back, has never met our son. like
still to this day.
To this day.
He left on the agreement that he was going to just go wrap some stuff up or work or something.
Yes. So it was very hard for me to try and navigate, what the hell is going on? Yeah.
And you knew you were pregnant when he left?
Oh, yeah.
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 Yeah. So that whole pregnancy was marked by
and it was a planned pregnancy. It wasn't it was not an accidental.
I mean, that's the other piece I feel like is probably worth, bringing up right now, which is around the not being able to release the bladder. Like everything's connected, right?
Yes.
And I want women who are new to the idea of birth and being at home and all of this, that like, well, it is my belief that that nothing is like random, and there is that layer. I'm not saying one created the other. It's not that black and white, obviously, but I guess I'm not quite sure the words here. Like, what do you make of that? Let me put it back to you. Like, what do you make of this huge heartache and reality that he's not there? He's at, you're about to become a mother. He's not there. And that's interesting that also this like physical manifestation gets presented.
There's two things that I want to say about that. Number one is that most of what I know now, I didn't realize until my most recent pregnancy. How much it affected me, how much it derailed my, inner stability and all of that. And just how much your emotional kind of matrix matters when you're moving into pregnancy and motherhood. Like I didn't know how much it could physically affect me, even though I'm a body worker and even though I would probably say that to somebody else. I don't think that I really understood that until I was in a space where I was safe enough to really kind of grieve and to look at that from all different angles. But your emotions, your support, like they matter so much. So there's that. And then the other thing that I wanted to share is that in one of the few sessions that I did to prepare for my most recent birth, I worked with one of my mentors who's a craniosacral therapist, and she's like beyond, like, she's just a witch. I don't know what else to call her. She's amazing. And she didn't know like the details of my whole story, but she was kind of scanning through my whole body, trying to figure out, if there's anything that my body physically needed before I was going to have my next birth. And she said, she's like, okay, there's some remnants of something going on the left side of your pelvic floor. And she's like, let me trace this back. When did this start? And she's going back and she's like, it was in your first trimester. She's like, I think it was like around week 11. And I'm like, which is exactly when I was left, and I was just like, I never told her that piece of it. So she said, yeah, when that happened, she's like, your pelvic floor twisted. She's like, and that's what was going on with your bladder by the time you were, in your birthing process. And I was just like, whew, she said you were absolutely shocked by that. It was and I was,
Hell yeah. And it makes sense that there would be a correlation around like not releasing into the next phase, into motherhood, like some sort of trauma, shock, holding.
Yes.
Given the context of your birth.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh. But also the other thing to just bring around here is the hospital sucks and is not a safe place.
No.
Period. And your story is so wild. And also, I mean, I hate hearing it. I hate knowing that you went through that. And everyone gets drug tested when they come into the hospital, and they're not told that. And I'm not saying that drugs, like nothing came up for you, obviously, but my point is like they're running tests on mothers. And here's Sparrow, a single mom, her partner isn't with her, coming into an LA hospital, and like you're nameless and faceless. You're just a statistic. You're just a blood panel, and the amount of error and accident that occurs within the system because of the lack of real human to human care is unacceptable. And you are, unfortunately, your first story is like, I hope, a very sobering wake up call to any of us who think, yeah, just know your rights. Just, like all that doula rhetoric, that's complete bullshit.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because I feel the exact same way. Like I would never, like maybe if I get hit by a bus, and like, okay, maybe take me there,
or like
then.
A broken bone.
Yes, that's what they're good at trauma.
Right.
They're good at trauma, I guess. And even then
they're actually still bad at it.
And I was going to say, even then,
still terrible.
What I talked to my dad about it, and we kind of both came up with this thing of like, yeah, they'll help you if they don't kill you first.
Right.
And that's, as awful as that sounds, that's really how I feel at this point. So I'm glad that you are clarifying that for anyone who's listening, because it can be easy to think like, oh, I can just rely on them as a backup, or, leave or sign myself out. And it's just like, just don't go there, especially in your deepest moment of vulnerability. And, how our births unfold, like really shape us. And yeah, I'm so happy that I have a different story to share.
Well, I guess that kind of begs the question, like, if you could rewrite that first birth, given your bladder, doing what it was doing, like, what do you think? What would have or could have been
different? I think that I would have reached out to, and this is assuming that I didn't know the bladder releasing technique that I know now. I think that I would have reached out to midwives to say, can you come give me a catheter at home, and just never, ever, ever have left my home. Yeah. I think that would have been like the next best thing that I could have.
Right.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me that would be, if your goal is to artificially release your bladder. Yeah. It makes sense to me that you would, especially you being connected in the LA world, trying to get a medical midwife over there to do it. And it's so painful that the really, like, it was the belief, it was the false confidence, the belief that you could like navigate it, that knocked your ass upside down. Yeah. Which could be anyone, like that's a point I just really want to get across here, because it is so random, and it's so like non-specific, like it's so random that happened. When you are an educated woman who knows how to speak, who understands the system, who's been to hospital births, like you're theoretically, unless you understand how truly nefarious the system is, it's easy to make up like, oh, I'll just like work it. Yeah. Okay. But we're here in celebration, because that is over. Yes. Lessons learned. And, your episode has gone on to help many, many, many free birthers release their bladders at home, which is so cool.
It's so cool. I've gotten a lot of messages from women too, which is it really helped my healing. So thank you so much for just having this avenue with you to be able to share that really, really hard learned lesson with others.
So then what happened, Sparrow?
So then I meet this, wonderful man who, like right off the bat was just on board with everything that I needed and wanted, for my life.
And how old is your son when you meet this one?
He was 2.5. Like we got pregnant like right away. So, so my older son, Nicio's 2.5. We meet, and it's before we even went on our first date, because we met online. So we were just talking, and he's already picking my brain about babies and what I want. And he knows, I had told him my first story, and he was just intrigued, about it. And, anyways, long story short, we just fell like so deeply in love. And that was even something that, there was, of course, a period of time where I was like, I don't even know if this will happen for me, in my late 30s. And, not that that means anything, but, there's these stories, right? That will I meet somebody?
Just an old hag with a kid.
Right. Yeah. I'm a single mom, will this happen for me?
Yeah. You don't know till you know, right?
Yeah, you don't know. And I was also like, can I get to a place where I could be okay, with only having my one? And I did feel like I could kind of, it was some work, but I felt like I could get there. But my biggest dream for myself, like where I could really see like my joy coming through, was being able to completely rewrite this story and to have a partner and a loving, father for my children. And that's what happened. So so he was on board from day one. I go to matriarch, we come back, we decide like, okay, we'll just open this door and see what happens. We get pregnant immediately. And, I don't know what else to say necessarily about the pregnancy, other than like, I felt so deeply seen and loved that it almost felt like it was enough for the current pregnancy and the past pregnancy. Mm. Like, it was really everything that my soul really didn't even know that it needed, to that degree. So just a lot of happiness, a lot of safety, a lot of contentment, moving through that whole pregnancy. And I was definitely open to free birthing, but I was also really open to having, a wise woman with me. And I ended up connecting with, a woman who's part of the membership, Maida, who's Brazilian. And I've had a long-standing love affair with Brazil since I was about 19. I've danced in many, many Brazilian dance companies in Los Angeles, and I speak Portuguese, and I just have an affinity. So I met Maida at a party of a mutual friend, and she brought 3 of her 4 children, and they were all speaking Portuguese, and like Nicio was there, and Nicio speaks Portuguese too. So he was like, look at all these, sweet boys. And anyways, long story short is that like she was present at the birth along with Keon, my partner. And she just really became just such a sister friend, just perfect fit for my healing journey. And I just loved her so much. I love her still so much. And I just had a really good time building a relationship with her over the months of my pregnancy. And, she just was what I needed. She really listened to me. She would always just ask me, like, when we would meet up, what do you want to do? What do you feel like you need today? And sometimes that was body work. And sometimes that was talking about like, and kind of honing in a little bit more on my nutrition and, just whatever it was. It was just always fun, and it was always tailored to whatever I needed. And I remember getting towards the end of my pregnancy, I think I was maybe like around 34 weeks, something like that. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't like going to be blindsided in any way. And so I kind of had this conversation with her of like, I want to know, like, what exactly do you bring to birth? Just like, what's in your birth bag? Like, just in case there was something that like didn't resonate with me. And she was like, let's go through my stuff, So we literally put everything from her bags out, and we just like looked at everything, and we talked about everything. And she like
medical.
Not really. Right? Like, I think that before she had heard before she listened to Sister Morningstar's First Breaths episode, I think she had a bag and mask in her bag that she had never used, and after that she took it out, and so that like wasn't even no, there wasn't a lot. There was like a rebozo, and there was like this amazing birth stool that came apart that she could screw together. There was hot water bottles and just like stuff, the homeopathic stuff, like nothing that I didn't feel like I wanted in my space. But she was like, let's make sure, like, let's go through this together and let's make sure.
Does she identify as a midwife? Like, does she use that word? Does she say midwife?
I think she has had a couple iterations throughout, her years, but I think at this point she calls herself an authentic birth attendant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes. And, she and I just had so much in common, and being in LA and the characters and the ride of trying to figure out, do I want to be a midwife? Because that was, that's how you and I met. That's where I thought I was going to go at some point, and backtrack that train for sure. And so
that's true. We did meet because I was going to take your place.
That's right.
In medical midwifery schools.
Mm-hmm. Because I was done.
And then we were both like, how about no? And let's just be really good friends.
Yes. And I just remember, because I didn't even know you and you were like willing to take my place. I was like, who is this angel girl? Like, who does this? Like, I don't even know. No, and I'm glad you didn't, but you offered, like, that, just even that openness, was so, yes, it was just amazing. So that's how we met. And where was I going with that story? Oh, just that we
are connected so well.
Yeah. And I think that was a turning point for me, of like really fully trusting that this woman could and would show up for me in the way that I really needed, and like her level of commitment to service to women was really palpable for me. And she knew what was at stake for me. And we had talked through so many things. And I cried so much in this pregnancy. I was just like watery and soft. And she's like, this is good. She's like, this is really good,
Especially after like 3 years of serious survival. Tough, I got this, persona in the seat.
Yeah. So I just remember her, like, after we went through her, all of the stuff in her bag, and she just kind of sat at my feet and she just said, I will be there, if you want me there, if you will have me there. She's like, I will be there in like the deepest capacity to serve you. She's like, you can call me, you cannot call me. She's like, you can call me and have me sit on the couch. She's like, however you need me to best serve you, I will be there. And it was great. It was wonderful.
Anything less than that is completely unacceptable.
Yes.
It's just not even like appropriate to be anything other than, I'll be there however you need.
Yeah.
I saw a doctor one time tell my doula client who wanted to like get into a hands and knees or something. He said, well, I don't bend.
Oh God.
It's not funny. It's versus like a woman at your feet being like, however you need me, I'm here in service of your beautiful dream birth. It's like, yes, that is all that is acceptable in my opinion. And women listening, if anyone is doing anything less than that, fire them.
Yes. Yeah. And then she gave me a foot bath and we just hung out and talked for like 2 more hours and it was wonderful. Yeah. So, she was.
Anything else to say about your pregnancy and the work of your pregnancy and heading into, a birth, your first vaginal birth, but still outside the system. And obviously, this, but, plenty of women want VBACs, but almost none, a very few amount choose to claim that outside of the very system that abused them.
Yeah.
Part of sharing these, VBAC stories outside of the system is for women to know you don't have to return to your abusive systems. Like, look at this story. Look at this story. Babies come out. There's nothing in the system for you. What other work might be worth happening?
I'm really glad that you asked this question because, it is so important because I was not fearless going into this at all. And I also just want to say too that I specifically scoured your podcast for stories of women having, free births at home. And of course there were so many wonderful stories, but I think because we're so wired to learn from each other and to know that, oh, this woman came before me and she did it, so I can do it. You know, specifically hearing the stories of Ita and Ariel, because those are women that I know in real life, like their stories just were like bombs for me, bombs for my soul. And yeah, and that's really, I think, why, you know, I was also so excited to share this story, because I want there to be at least one more out there for women to know that, yeah. But yeah, leading into my birth, I definitely had this really weird doubt of like, is this baby really going to come out of my yoni? Like, really, you know, because it's such a strange thing to feel like I had done most of labor, you know, and even like I was in labor for 3.5 days. I got to quote unquote 10 centimeters before everything got derailed. Like I had done the majority of the experience and not actually had the passage of a baby through my body. So it was really weird trying to navigate that in my pregnancy of like, is this really going to happen? And I remember after it did happen, I was able to just like viscerally almost go back in time to the moment that I was laboring with Nisio and just be like, I can see how it would have happened if I had been in a different circumstance.
Of course.
So yes, I had fear, I had doubt. I had a lot of healing to do during my pregnancy, and I really took the time to do it. You know, I really treated the pregnancy as, like I knew that being able to be here and tell this story that I'm telling now, and how it unfolded, that this was going to be key to how I was going to feel about myself and about motherhood. And I just knew the stakes were really high. So I did everything that I could, you know, like I got a lot of self-care. And, you know, for those of you who don't know, like I am a prenatal massage therapist. I own a wellness center specifically that works with women. So I literally just went to all of the therapists that I've trained and work with and love, and they helped me. So it was like, you know, I had a lot of access to the care. So like, I'm not going to not do it. And then I also, you know, I did some work with my mentor. I did some, EFT tapping sessions with one of the other women that I work with. It's the emotional freedom technique. And that was really powerful. And kind of, I had a whole conversation with my, like first trimester self from my first pregnancy of just like, if I could have told myself what I know now in that moment, how would that have felt to receive that? And it was really powerful, really healing for me. There was a lot of things that were really healing. I talked to Nancy and I talked to Kristen because I had just come out of blood mystery school, and, you know, I just loved them so much. And Nancy really helped me find the gems that I could take from my first experience to carry with me into my new experience. Kristen really helped me, just really realize that my emotions were strong enough to impact my birth. And even just that realization was really powerful for me. So yeah, I did a lot of things. And not to say that anyone else would need to do those things, but because I had access and because I had these relationships already intact, you know, and because I was in a place financially where I could do those things, I was like, why would I not do that? You know,
That's what's interesting about this, because I mean, the potential, if you hadn't have done that, the potential would be arguably higher that you would have unconsciously self-sabotaged, right? Like that's the reason to do it that's the reason to cleanse and to do the work. Because of course, if someone can just like shut up and get out of their own way, a baby is definitely going to come out, right? That's like obvious. That's what we know, except it's a really tall order to shut up and get out of your own way, especially with trauma and when you have a primary surgical birth and when you have the doubt and the fear that is groomed into us our entire lives. That's a tall order.
It is.
So, I mean, of course, no one needs to do it because from a biological perspective, a baby will come out of you. But also, I would say at the same time, everyone needs to do it because the likelihood that you'll self-sabotage is even higher without the work.
Yeah. And I didn't have this like easy breezy birth. So I am so glad that I did the work ahead of time, because I feel like the most difficult part of my birth was what was going on in my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, maybe that's true for everybody, but you know, yeah, and maybe I can segue into the actual birth, because yeah.
Do you feel complete?
Yeah, I think so. Did you have any other questions? You asked such great questions.
Hey, I've been doing this for a while.
Yeah. I mean,
no, I think you say whatever you want to say that leads you into the start of your birth.
I had a softness about me emotionally going into my birthing period, but I had some rigidity in my mental state. And it's weird that both of those things were true for me, but like my body was just really soft. Like I would cry easily. I was just, I was flowing through my emotions, but then I was also had some rigidity and stupid things. Like I thought my baby was going to be an Aries. I thought I was going to be like stupid things where I'm just like, who cares? Like, who cares?
Just like grasp at control.
Yes. And let me tell you, like it got knocked out of me real quick in my birth story. And I'll get into that. Because I wasn't even that conscious that I was doing it. I was kind of like, oh, I'm pretty sure, but even in that like sureness, I was kind of like, right? Like I'm going to, So yeah, and I was for sure I was going to go past 40 weeks. Like in my first birth, my water broke at 41 and 2, and then he was in my arms at 41 and 6. 3.5 days of labor. And so I was not expecting to give birth at 39 and 1, which is what happened. And I probably could have been, because the whole week before I was having signs that I was getting like my mucus plug started coming out. That never happened the first time. And I should also say too that I was praying that the start of my labor would look differently than the start of my first labor, because I just felt like if it was going to start the same, that it might mentally throw me off. And it started pretty much exactly the same. So it was, I had some work to do there. I had some shit I had to work through. But leading up to it, I was losing my mucus plug starting on Thursday. Baby was born on Sunday. So, I could tell like my body's softening. It's doing all this stuff, but I'm still like, no, I'm still like a week and a half, 2.5 weeks away. Like, all this arbitrary story that I'm telling myself. And then let me see, Keon's last day of work was Friday. And I thought we were going to have at least a week to just be together, and he was going to have 12 weeks off. It was this awesome scenario. I was like, we can have like one of those to just, do whatever we wanted. And then, yeah, like Sunday comes around, and my water just pops.
What were you doing when it happened?
I was walking to the bathroom, which is exactly what happened the first time.
Okay.
And it's so weird because that water's opening is not necessarily like a super common way for labors to start, but it did. And it wasn't like the huge gush, it wasn't a full opening. It was just a small pop, baby gush, and then it was just like a trickle. And it was exactly
the same start.
Yeah.
Like you had to do a rewrite. We're rewriting.
Oh my gosh. So
did it freak you out? Was it like bad, or like did it take a second? How did that land for you?
It took me, it's so weird. It took me a minute to like, first I felt like a lot of anxiety boiling up. And then I dropped myself right into denial. It was just like, whoop, and then right into, nah, this isn't happening. So my water popped. There was just a teeny tiny bit of mech. That also kind of freaked me out, even though I know. And it was like barely anything. It was very light. It was just like a tinge, just a tiny tinge. But I could feel my anxiety shoot up. And then I was just like, it's going to be fine. This baby's not going to come for another few days anyways. There goes the denial.
Funny
Okay.
thing to make up.
Huh?
That's such a funny thing to make up.
Oh my God.
Well,
Well,
it's like we do it in any direction. Like
yeah.
either women are like, the baby's coming today and it's actually in 5 days, or
Yeah.
it's the baby's coming in 5 days and it's today.
So that was my story. And then so we just decided to all go on a family walk. And no, like I put on one of those postpartum underwear sets to just catch all the water that was starting to leak out of me. And we go on this walk, and I really did enjoy it, and it was just really sweet to see like Nisio like running and Keanu playing, and it was just like a really sweet walk. And then for some reason I was just like, maybe I'll do some curb walking, also not thinking that I'm going to have a baby for another few days, which I would not do that again for anybody who's listening.
Walking?
Where you put one foot on the sidewalk and one foot off the curb. So you're doing this.
Why?
Because it helps the baby get down. I know. I would not do that again, Emily.
That's very doula of you.
It was. But this is, I'm just telling you, like, if I had just surrendered, everything would have unfolded for me with a little bit more ease,
Yeah, like that's like our life's lesson.
Yeah, right. So I don't really know why I did that. It kind of felt fun for the moment, and then
it feels fun to do something.
Yeah,
that's what it is, right? We're doers, and I'm only critiquing this because I'm the exact same way, and I so feel you. There's still like layers for us, I think, for most women, even in the free birth world, to like really understand through a lived experience that there's nothing to do. And that is where you meet surrender. And that takes a lot of effort for people who live all up in our heads and are control freaks, which is pretty much everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, and isn't it also hilarious that I'm like, oh yeah, this baby's not going to come for another few days, but I'm just going to do this thing to help. Quote, I'm making air quotes for anybody who's listening on just the podcast. Yeah, so it was just, I was in it. I was really working through some stuff mentally there, but I get back from the walk, and I also had a reflexology session on the books. We got back from the walk at 3:30. I had a session booked at 4, and I had earlier in the day, I was like, would you be open to making this a house call? Because I'm just not sure. My water's open. Just not sure what's going to happen. So she shows up at 4:00, and right before she gets there, I kind of start to get that I'm probably in labor. Oh no, sorry. Before she gets there. Yes, let me back this up. Before she gets there, I take a shower after the walk, and probably because baby was so wedged in there from all that stupid curb walking that I just did, I wasn't feeling him move. And it was that was also, I remember having this moment of just starting to create a story of why isn't my baby moving? I didn't feel any movements at all. I started jiggling my belly. I started talking to the baby. I'm like, hey, can you give me something here? Nothing, right? Mm-hmm. And then I start to create the story of okay, great. My first birth is derailed this way. Now this baby's dead. Great. This is how this is going to go. Oh my God. And then I just took a breath.
Yeah.
And I put my hand on my heart, and I just kind of checked in, and I was just I feel zero sadness. It was just a script running in my head. And I was just I feel zero sadness. I was I don't feel like this is actually what's going on. But I think that was a serious reality check for me of who the fuck cares what astrology sign your baby is? Who cares if you're going to birth at 39 weeks? Who cares? I was just get on board, Sparrow, right now. That was my reality check. And so when I got out of that shower, I was just baby, I was you can do whatever you need to do as long as you are safe and you are coming to us because we love you and we want you. And, I didn't want to freak out my partner, but I was also just being real with him. I was I took a shower. I didn't feel a whole lot of movements, for the first time. And I was like, can you just talk to the baby and see if you can get a response? And so he, you know, he had this whole thing that he would do throughout the pregnancy. And he was like, you know, baby, this is daddy, you know, over, like, I need you to please give us a kick. Let us know that you're good. And it didn't happen right away. And he kind of went to different spots, but he was really, like, sweet and really
And the baby's like, I'm trying to sleep before I make the biggest move of my life. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I know. So, but
I get a little nap in before birth.
Probably, and because I probably wedged him in there, he's like, it's really hard to move now. I was like, the water I was in is gone.
Believe that your curb walking did anything.
Well,
I really don't.
I'm open to that as well.
Well, just because, like, the baby in the birth process is, like, more powerful than that.
Yes, it's true.
And you've been wiggling around your pelvis the whole time, you know? Anyway.
Yeah. So, but luckily, Keon was not
Tripping.
scared.
Yeah.
He was not scared. He was not tripping. He was just super sweet. He just did exactly what I wanted. He made me laugh.
Good.
And then the baby went bang and, like, gave one big kick that was, like, totally undeniable. Both of us felt it, and we're like, I was like, okay, now I'm on board with this. Like, now I understand, like, what's going on. Then I had this reflexology session that I barely made it through, by the way, because she got there at 4:00 and the waves just started hitting me. And it was like, they took all of my attention and all of my, like, I had to breathe through them, like, as soon as they started. So she's working on my feet, and she's lovely, and I know her really well. But she's just like, these are coming, like, every 2 minutes from the start. Like, that was, like, right when I was like, okay, this is happening. And it was just, it took everything from me. And then by the time that she was done, which I was like, I could barely get through it, like, barely even sit through it. I called Maida, and I was just like, okay, it's on, like, head over. You know, when I was like, I think I asked her to be there by, like, in, like, an hour and a half or something like that. I was just like, and she was. By the time she got there, I was full body trembling through all of the really, really powerful waves that were coming. And they were, they were pretty much like, it was pretty much like about 4.5 hours, because the first little bit it took, like, all of my energy, but I could still kind of breathe through them. But, like, the last, like, 4.5 hours out of my 6-hour birth, I was uncontrollably, like, purple pushing through every contraction. Like, it was like my body was just cranking up, and then I would just that's what I sounded like through every contraction. And I was trying to catch my breath. Some of the times I could in the beginning, and then, like, for the last, like, maybe, like, 3 hours of the labor, like, I was not breathing through, like, the first part of my contraction, and then I would catch my breath and then just really try and breathe through it. It was so intense. It was, yeah.
Excuse me. What was happening on the inside? What was happening in Sparrow's mind?
In my mind, I was also telling myself the story that this was going to go on for days, or at least 24 hours or something. Like, I had, you know, when you have a 3.5 day birth, I'm sure it's like you, right? We have similar stories. When you have a 3.5 day birth and then you end up with a 6-hour birth, I had no idea that my body could do that in that amount of time. So,
I mean, the only knowledge I had was I had never seen someone who had had a multi-day birth have a multi-day second birth.
Yeah, that's
you know what I mean? That was the only thing I kept, like, because I had a 6-hour birth too, coming back to, is I was like, okay, I need a reality check here. Like, nobody who's doing what I'm doing does this for 3 days.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's really hard to access those little pieces of logic.
It really was.
It really is.
Yeah, I was wrestling with a little bit of self-pity
Mm-hmm.
for
Oh,
part of that. Yeah. And it didn't help too that like the entire labor also felt like it was in my back and in my ass. Like it was so uncomfortable. It was so powerful, and it was just so on top of me. Like I feel like I could have if it could have just given me a little bit more time to breathe, in between.
it could have just calmed down a little bit. Okay,
Yeah.
you and me, we're going for ecstatic, blissful birth with our thirds. Okay.
I really think that we can pull that off. I really do.
We have to.
We have to.
Apparently, it's just a choice. Yolanda said there's just a door hidden somewhere in there that you can choose
Oh
to.
my gosh. All right. Well, I'm going to be looking for that door. Let me tell you next
For
time.
it. I forgot. I didn't even know to look for it last time. Yeah.
Oh my
Okay,
gosh.
so it's just fucking insane. It's on top of you. The word I used with mine, which I think you agreed with, was like being pummeled. It was just like
Oh
there was
yeah.
no space to find my center. I was just like, yeah,
Yeah. There was a point where what I described, which now I know is transition, like I got in the shower, and in the shower I felt like a wet cat that just wanted to crawl up the walls of the shower. Of just like I wanted out of my skin for a minute, and then I was just like, okay, something's got to shift here, and it's got to be internally with me. And at that moment when I was in the shower, first of all, Kian and Maida were amazing. Like they didn't pity me. They were just both super grounded. They were both so sweet. I was a little bit upset that like I couldn't like, I tried at one point to kind of like wrap my arms around Kian and like kiss him and kind of have like a sway little moment. And then another one would come and I just like buckled, and he was so available for that. But it just was not, it was just not happening. So I'm in the shower.
When you were on the walk.
Yeah.
That was when you could have done it.
But I was still in denial then. So that was on me. So I'm in the shower. They're sitting there and they're just witnessing me without any other kind of like pity. They weren't like giving me like annoying kind of, pep talks. And I didn't really feel like I needed that either.
Where's Nicio?
So Nicio was there for like the first like hour, like 2.5 hours of my birth. He was there from 4 to 6:30. And then my mom came and got him. It was so intense. I would have liked for him to maybe have been there, but once I realized what I was dealing with and what I sounded like, I was just like, I think it would have scared him. So my mom took him.
Sorry. I was just going to say, it wasn't just about that I was going to scare her. It was also that like managing her energy was a no. Like I couldn't handle thinking about anyone else's energy in the space, which I wouldn't be able to get out of with my child. Was that similar?
Yeah. Yes, it was similar. So my mom lives 3 minutes away from where we live. We've moved since then, but so she took him and he spent the night there and then ended up getting woken up and coming back to meet the baby later that night. But yeah, so it was just Kian and Maida. And so I'm in the shower. I'm wanting to crawl out of my skin. I'm looking at them and I just asked them, I said, I need some time by myself. I said, can both of you leave and I'll just call you back in when I'm ready, And they were like, absolutely. And they both walked out and I just had some privacy. And I was just like, okay, like I just really told myself, I was like, you need to recommit to this. Because like there was never a moment, like I was suffering through a lot, but there was never a moment that I was like, oh, I want to be saved, or like I was ever even tempted in any way to do anything other than what I was doing. I was like, I'm either going to do this or I'm going to die. Well, those are the two options essentially. And I didn't actually ever feel like I was going to die. It was just kind of, that's what's on the table for you. So, and I was just like, let me just recommit to this. I was just like, I was toying with whether or not I wanted to check myself and just feel if I could feel anything, because I was so scared of like, if I don't feel anything, is that gonna like wreck me? And so I kind of got right with myself first, and I was like, look, your body is working really hard. Like your body is doing something super powerful. If you want to check yourself, go ahead. But I was like, is it going to wreck you if you don't feel anything? And I decided, no, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, because eventually something will be there and there will be a baby. So I'm in the shower and I do check myself, and I'm like, okay, I can feel a head. And that was really,
Thank God.
yes. I mean, I'm glad that I had kind of talked myself through the possibility of what are you going to feel if you don't feel anything. But I reached in and I was like, I do feel a head. And it was, in like, there was probably like 4 centimeters. Like it wasn't anything like crazy. But also, I'm really happy to share the story, because like the way that my birth unfolded, like the baby was out like less than 40 minutes later. But, I didn't know that. And based on what I was feeling, I was like, okay, I made up another story, but it was fine. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this for 4 more hours. You can do this at this intensity for 4 more hours. And I was like, but I just got this like renewed sense of like, I'm in this, I'm committed to this, and I'm going to do this. Then my hot water ran out, and I was just like, fuck, okay, I can still do this. But I had gotten in such a good zone. Recommit again. So I get out of the shower, and I didn't really consciously do this, but I only called Keon back into the room. I didn't call Maida. And I asked Keon, I was like, he had these like real squishy, foamy workout mats. I said, can you put one here on the bathroom floor for me? And he brought it in, and then I got hit with another one. I just dropped to my knees, and I'm laboring there. And he just stayed in there with me. He was kind of behind me. I'm on hands and knees. And then I don't think I could have been there longer than like 15 minutes. And I just felt a head just fall onto my pelvic floor. It almost like I didn't hear a pop or like necessarily feel a pop, but it was almost like something popped open and a baby dropped onto my pelvic floor. And I was just like, holy shit. Like, so what I'm going to describe from the time that I felt my baby drop onto my pelvic floor to the time that he was outside my body was less than a minute. It was insanely fast. So what I'm going to kind of talk through is like all happening in just seconds, right? So I feel his head drop onto my pelvic floor, thinking that I was still hours away. And my first thought was, no way this is happening right now. And then my second thought was, hallelujah, this is happening. It felt so good. Like it was the only little bit of relief that I got. And then like the second that his head was on my pelvic floor, there was so much force behind his body that my yoni just totally swole around his head, just like in an instant. Like it felt like, like a tuba player, like blowing up a balloon, like so easy, right? It's like my tissues felt like nothing. They were just, and then I was just like, and I'm trying to like acknowledge what's happening because it's happening so fast. And then my birth work brain kicked on for like a pathetic few seconds where I'm like, slow this down, because that's a lot of stretching for these tissues really fast. And I literally let out like the most pathetic, like 4 little pants, like, and then his whole head was out. It didn't do anything. Like my body was just nonstop train. And I remember saying out loud, like, baby's coming. Cause I don't even think, even though Keon was right next to me, I don't think he really realized that there was like a head right there and that it was out. And then that kind of cued Maida, and she didn't actually come into the room because I hadn't invited her. And I just had said out loud, baby's coming. And then, a few seconds later, his entire body shot out between my legs onto the mat in front of me. And this is another really, I think, important part of my story that I want people to hear too, is that if I had been with any other care provider, even someone who had some medical training but thought that they were, really of service to women birthing at home in their own autonomy, I think that it absolutely would have been pathologized that my son was he had no tone. Like he was just like a floppy little baby, right? So he shoots out and he's face up, but his little legs kind of crossed over one another. So at that point I didn't even realize or care if he was a boy or a girl. And I remember just like reaching for him. And even though I was kind of like dazed and shocked by what had just happened, I did have this moment. So I'm going to cry that like, I was like, my hands are the first hands touching my baby. And I was very aware of that. And that felt so good because that's what I had wanted, for my first. And that wasn't at all what happened. So even though, he's this little floppy guy, I was just like, he's mine and I'm discovering him. And yeah, so he wasn't breathing at all and he was floppy. And then I just kind of quietly said Maida's name and I wasn't freaking out at all. And, I had listened to Sister Morningstar's and your episode about newborn first breaths. And so I had Maida and we had kind of talked through it. And she had told me that she had a client whose baby took about 10 minutes to transition. And just, it was not a scary thing for her. So she came in and just really quietly sat her back against the cabinets on the floor of my bathroom. And I just started talking to the baby, and we didn't have a name picked out for him. I didn't know if he was a boy or girl, anything at that point, but I just started kissing him and talking to him. And I remember he like opened one little eye, like one of those like creepy dolls, and then just kind of shut it. Not to say he wasn't creepy at all, but just the way his eye opened and then kind of shut. He had a crazy wild ride getting shot out into the world like that. So, and I just kept saying like, hi, how, like, you're here. We love you. It's time to come into your body. And I was rubbing him and kissing him and holding him. And Kian kind of moved. He sat on the toilet right next to me because he had been behind me. And I didn't know it at the time because he's just so like stoic and quiet, but he was a little freaked out internally. But as I kept, talking to him, he kind of like, he was like, oh, I get it now. And he kind of got on board, and then he put his face right next to my face and we both just started kissing the baby and, saying like, it's time to come into your body and we love you. And it was a really long time. Like he would take little sips of air and then just kind of stop. And, I wouldn't have had any idea of exactly how long it was, except that Maida told me later. Like I found out like maybe like a week later exactly how long it was. And it was 18 minutes for him to fully kind of come into his body and be breathing.
But also he was connected to your placenta and getting sips.
Yes.
So like the transition, okay, took 20 minutes, but he wasn't without oxygen.
Correct. Yeah.
Which is a distinction.
Yeah. And I knew that, and yeah, and he was okay. And at one point, after we'd been at this for like a while, like I could hear he just had like stuff in his face. So I just really gently kind of sucked and spit out some gunk that was in his nose. And he didn't like it. Like he made this like little like grimace, like, ugh, like, why did you do that? And at that moment, I was just like, I'm annoying him. And that's so sweet. Like it really like touched my mama heart. I was just like, and I told him, I was like, I'm sorry, baby. I was like, I didn't mean to like bother you. But like when he made that little like, ugh, like, don't do that to me kind of face, I was like, it just, I knew that he was going to be totally fine, and I apologized to him and just kind of kept calling him in. And it was just really sweet where I could just tell that I was just annoying him and that he didn't actually even really maybe even need that at all.
You're like, I'm just trying to help. I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah. And so, yeah. And I was just also so grateful that I wasn't anywhere other than that situation because yeah, like he could have easily been taken and, it would have dramatically changed how I felt about my birth,
Well, you wouldn't, if you had been with like medical providers, you wouldn't have even gotten to that part because your waters opened with no significant labor with meconium. Like you would have had a repeat C-section so early in your story, even with medics, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then even to get to this point, which you wouldn't have even gotten to this point with other.
Yeah. I guess I was only thinking like if I had like a midwife or a midwife at home who thought that she was in support of free birth, but then saw this particular scenario unfold. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of what I was thinking. Like even in that scenario, like it could have gotten sabotaged.
Well, yes, I mean, even a well-meaning doula sabotages births all the time. Like I interview and debrief with women all the time who have all sorts of people at their births that are outside the system technically, but everyone there has been so conditioned by the system that they're all terrified of what's happening, and they will still sabotage the birth for sure. Yes, of course. But a limp, toneless baby connected in an undisturbed, normal physiological birth and dark room, surrounded only by your family, with the mother who's totally in her body and in the room speaking to the baby. Like I would actually say that is totally normal. Like how you've described it. And both my babies were born very similarly. And it's so different when it's in this context where they're still connected.
Yeah.
Literally, they're getting their blood transfusion. The mother is who's waking them up. And I think it only feels crazy because of our conditioning. Because when you watch like animal videos, or see they do that shit too. They're like, for a while. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And thank God. Yes, thank God that you were so well supported and that no one interrupted your halo and that he got the exact full range of time that he needed to fully arrive, because there is that spiritual component I think about a lot of how much our culture interrupts the claiming of life. And there's something so potent about a baby being born and choosing it, like choosing to claim its life in every way. And I think people might confuse that with like, oh, do we not help them? It's like, well, of course, if the mother instinctually wants to do something, of course, the mother should do whatever they feel like they want to do, whether it's even helpful or not. Like, if you feel it, do it. It is interesting to kind of investigate the layers of the suctioning piece, because there's still this like we need to do something. There's still this like wanting to help piece that's really, it's not wrong or bad. It's just interesting to see how like deep that stuff runs in us.
It does. I mean, I waited a really long time before I did that, but yes, it was.
So tell me about when you saw that he was a boy.
Oh yeah, we realized he was a boy because as he was like really coming into his body, and then he like really started breathing, I was just looking at his face, and then all of a sudden I like feel something like hit my shoulder wet, and I like look at Keon and I'm like, what's happening? And we realize like he's peeing on both of us, like, and we looked at it, we're like, oh my god! I was like, we have a boy. So so he peed on us, and that's when we realized that he was a he. And and then the placenta came really easily. So we sat there for like a little bit, and then Maida kind of asked me, she's like, we should probably maybe start thinking about the placenta. What do you think? And I was like, yeah, that sounds like good to get that out. And so she gets a bowl, sets it in front of me, turns around to get something else. Meanwhile, I like just put my one leg up over the bowl and just give just like a tiny little push, and it came right out. And she turned back around. I think she was like getting a towel or something. And she's like, wait, what? Huh? What? It's out? And I'm like, yep. And she's like, well, okay. She's like, birth complete. We're like, birth complete. And then like they helped me like get all like wiped all the blood off me and just kind of helped me walk to bed and just kind of checked in if I felt dizzy. And I was like, I feel great. I was like, I'm good. It felt great to get in bed with my baby. And it felt great to have the placenta out. It felt good to just be complete, to be on the other side of it, and to have this, beautiful boy and climb in bed with my man. And, and after a little while, we called my mom and we just said, if he's meaning Nisio, if he is willing to wake up and he wants to come, like, he's welcome. And again, it was like 3-minute drive over, so super easy. And he came and he met the baby. And we decided to name him Roshi, which means like master or enlightened teacher in Japanese. And it just felt very fitting to me because I felt like he taught me so much throughout that birth. And it was one of the names that we had kind of set aside, but we didn't know until we met him what his name was going to be. So yeah, so little Roshi was with us, and postpartum was so much better than the first time. I just had so much great care. And like I said, Keon was off work for 12 weeks and he was just so absolutely present and of service, I never had, my water never ran out. I didn't have snacks or food next to me. And then, watching him like really take the lead on fathering Nisio, like getting him up, getting him ready for school, cooking him every meal, taking him, he was still in school at that time, taking him to school, picking him up. And it was almost like I kind of became like a second thought to Nisio. Like there was no, there was like a couple moments where I was like, hey dude, like, can you acknowledge me over here?
Natural spinning of the wheel.
Yeah.
In a functional family,
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so
He had so much love and attention from him. And I feel like their bond like really solidified during that time. And and then I just got to really heal and, be with the little one.
Anything else you want to add about postpartum? Anything that surprised you or that you particularly loved or that stood out?
I think that it would be good to just talk about the tear that I had and how it healed. Just because there's still, I feel like, a lack of stories around what tearing and not having sutures can be like, So of course, like having a baby land on my pelvic floor and then be exited my body in less than a minute, like my body really did not have a whole lot of time. So I had, I had a tear, and I really just healed it with, I kind of rotated between using seaweed and manuka honey. And then whenever I would use the restroom, rinsing with a peri bottle with comfrey tea, and then drinking comfrey tea, and just, eating a traditional diet and having a lot of bone broth soups and resting and keeping my legs closed. And I know all those things have been kind of said on the podcast again, but I was just like amazed at how well I healed, like how completely I healed, how well I healed, how easy it was to transition back into intimacy when I felt ready. Like all of it was just easeful despite having, a tear during birth. So I just I couldn't have even imagined having someone come at me with a suturing needle after, it's like, it's insane. And also, it's like, when I think about my birth and like all that purple pushing, like I was swollen. Like, how are you going to repair something that you can't even see well?
It doesn't repair it. It's bullshit.
It's bullshit.
It hurts it and traumatizes it. It doesn't. It's not real. It's a fucking lie.
So I think
it just stretched and is swollen, and then shove a needle repeatedly through it.
Yeah, it's just awful.
When the big spoiler alert is it would have just healed on its own. Like that is some unethical shit right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to speak to that because I was just, I just healed so well, so completely. I feel so great. Like just, So I want other women to know that that's, very, very possible. And then besides that, besides feeling just, I just felt so integrated, so much more joyful, so much more, everything after that. And I still feel that like it has carried through, into my life, into, who I am now. And I'm so happy I got to rewrite this story, and I hope it's helpful for some women out there. And just like I said, the other stories that I listened to prepare for my birth helped me so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's such a big deal. And I'm just like thinking on that so many women believe, until they don't, that after these horrific and unnecessary surgeries, that their only choice is to like roll the dice with the same people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is insane. You just don't have to. You can just allow your baby to emerge. You can allow, your baby to be born. And also, I think also what's really underneath a lot of this is that people are afraid to take responsibility. People are afraid to own their choices.
Yeah.
And women who tend to birth outside the system tend to also own more of their choices. Like, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's not like this one thing, like the concept of practicing self-responsibility is very like alive in our community and the women that free birth for obvious reasons. But I guess what I want to say is that, for anyone listening kind of on the verge, like, do whatever you want, of course, because only you are going to live with the result of your choices, and your doctor doesn't live with it. They go home and clock out and totally forget about you. Your midwife doesn't live with your choices like you do, and you and your baby do. And like Sparrow said earlier, the stakes are so freaking high. You better ask yourself what is the best way that you can birth, and then do everything you can to align yourself with that, because the stakes are so high. And we can, what am I trying to say here? That there is actually no such thing as getting out of taking responsibility, because only you make the choices for your life. So this idea of like passing the buck, and like, if something happens, this is all very unconscious for most people, but like, at least the doctor will be there to basically take the blame, and that's a big thing to investigate. And that's a lot of what we talk about in the RBK school and everywhere else that I teach and that Yo teaches, because if you aren't willing to take responsibility for your choices, you also can't have what you want.
Yeah.
Is really what I'm getting at. And like, your willingness to go into your darkness, do your work, face the reality of what has, resulted in painful results, is actually what put you on the path to get willing to have something different, right? Like, your willingness to do the work, which means facing yourself and owning your choices, can lead to exactly what you described, which is just the best. I love the image of Keon getting Nisio ready for school, and you just in bed with this baby, and just like, especially because I love you as my friend, but just what a family healing experience. I'm just so glad that you get to know that. And of course you do. And I'm really proud of you and the choices that you've been willing to make to have this. This didn't just like happen. You called it, you've said yes to it, which is why it's here.
Thank you. Yeah. And thank you for being such a wonderful friend and witnessing me through all of these iterations of this story, and to see me where I am now. So I love you.
Love you too. Thank you so much for sharing your story here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed the show today. You can support this podcast by donating to it on freebirthsociety.com and leaving an awesome review on whatever platform you listen on. The more reviews, the more visibility the show gets, so let's spread the word of sovereign birth. We've always got a lot going on at Free Birth Society, and you can find out about all of it at freebirthsociety.com, at Free Birth Society on Instagram, and opt in to my newsletter below in the show notes. We offer courses on free birth, authentic midwifery, and the blood mysteries, as well as one-on-one coaching, in-person retreats, and of course, our annual Women's Festival. Our exclusive, vetted, private membership is definitely something to check out if you're looking for a community of wise sisters. Together we rise. We must speak our stories, claim our lives, and support one another. This is the living revolution, and I am so grateful to be in it with all of you. I'll leave you with our epic Free Birth Society theme song, Wild Woman by Aruba Red.
I honor you for the wisdom you held, the ancient traditions of plant medicine and womb magic. I feel the spirit of the ancestors as I place my hands upon my belly. This sacred portal will be honored. Eons upon light beams of survival, withstanding the eradication of our power by design. I will not allow the separation of our young to be forced upon me. My sisters will no longer birth in captivity. The picket line redefined from burning our wild women to paralyzing us and drugging our babes. Strapped down in a clinical white bed, drying up the milk from our breasts. Keep your needles. My family will never again be doomed to chase those dragons or your poison. We reject your fear. We choose love. Everything with intention. Death, ascension. I will fly and bring her